नाम की आवाज नहीं करेंगे।
कॉपी करनी है। यही फोन है मेरे। Not what you can. Mommy, oh, come on,
Yes, so I mean, we really have very important questions, and all these questions trying to discuss request our Director Sir of Prestige Institute of Management and Research, Dr. R.K. Sharma Sir, to welcome our dignitaries. And he is going to welcome our dignitaries as well as all the participants. And I'm really delighted to announce that we are having participants across the nation and also from other countries as well, like Indonesia, Philippines, Sri Lanka, Pakistan. So all the participants are there, and they are, media professionals, media educators, PhD scholars, as well as other people also have joined us. So I hope that this discussion would be really useful for all of us. So now I will, before I request to Dr. R.K. Sharma sir, I want throw a light a bit on Prestige Institute of Management and Research, to which we are associated with. Prestige Institute of Management and Research is an institution imparting, education, quality education since more than 25 years. And we are graded with NAC A. So now I'll request our Director Sir to please welcome our dignitaries who are going to start our discussion on importance of media literacy and critical thinking. So Dr. R.K. Sharma sir.
Good evening, everybody. I welcome you to this very important webinar, which is being held by Prestige Institute of Management and Research on media literacy. And it is a very important topic and need of the hour when it is being given to understand that news channels, different media of or the media houses, especially those who are involved in the form of print media or in the form of social media or in the form of electronic media, because of cutthroat competition, instead of giving a right news, some of these houses, they are manufacturing the news. So this is a new trend which has come up. So the media literacy in itself is a very important topic at this time, And this has to be spread to not only people associated with media, but even to people, the common public. So I really appreciate the effort of Bhavna and Zubair for organizing such a webinar on such an important topic. I especially welcome Mr. Frank Becker from United States of America, Shri K.V. Nagarajji, and Dr. Anubhuti Yadav. And I hope that their inputs will be quite valuable for all the participants. And I wish you a happy learning and a very fruitful outcome of this webinar. I also welcome all the participants. As Bhavna has said, I think there are more than 250 participants, not only from India, but across the globe. I also welcome each one of them. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. So now I would, before I request our session chair, Professor Dr. K.V. Nagaraj sir, to just proceed, I will request Professor Zubair Khan sir to please play the audio-visual profile of respected K.V. Nagaraj sir. I mean, when I just requested sir, I got, profile of his of 22 pages. So, he is having such a huge experience of teaching media, basically. So, we just precisely highlighted something. So, requesting Professor Zubair Khan sir to play the audiovisual profile of Professor Dr. K.V. Nagaraj sir.
Some problem.
Professor Dr. K.V. Nagaraj. Professor K.V. Nagaraj is former Professor of Mass Communication, Mizoram University, former Pro-Vice Chancellor, Professor and Head of the Department of Mass Communication, and held several other responsible posts in Assam Central University. Sir was Professor and Chairman, Department of Mass Communication and Journalism in Mangalore University, Dean, Faculty of Arts in Mangalore University, Professor and Head of Mass Communication Department of Andhra University, Reader and Chairman in University of Mysore. He served as a media educationist for more than 45 years. Professor K.V. Nagaraj has rich experience of working in print media as well. He is an editorial advisor board of many renowned journals of various universities. Sir was advisor in Story and Journalism Institute, Varanasi, Department of Mass Communication, Dhaka University, Bangladesh, Public Service Commissions of different states, National Eligibility Test conducted by University Grants Commission, State Level Eligibility Test conducted by Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. Sir is member of several academic bodies of universities, participated in several national and international seminars and conferences, organized numbers of seminars and workshops, delivered special lectures at the academic staff of colleges in many universities. He was invited as visiting professor to several universities. He has several professional membership of various organizations of repute. Professor Nagaraj guided several doctoral and postdoctoral research successfully. Recognized as doctoral research guide by several universities, he is having such a rich experience in media education and initiated media literacy in India. We welcome you, sir.
We welcome you, sir, on behalf of the Communication Department of Prestige Institute and Management, and would like to request you to proceed the session and talk about the, we can say, the philosophical corridor of media literacy.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. You're very much
okay. Okay, thank you. Let me say good evening, good morning, and in some places it can be even night, and I will tell them good night also before I leave. Anyway, I start uh, by saying hello to Mr. Frank Baker and Dr. Anubhuti, whom I know very well, and all other friends. Let me speak about what is media literacy in the Indian context. Even though I have written a few articles on media literacy for Media Literacy Yearbook published by Gothenburg University, I would like to share both as a professional. In fact, I started my career as a professional journalist and also as a teacher. Why media literacy is needed in India? Uh, there are many reasons. One is India is the country which has got the highest readership of newspapers. Of course, slowly things are changing. And the other media, electronic media, both radio and television, are increasing their coverage. So we can say we are moving towards a high media penetration. When there is a high media penetration, I believe we have to have a clear understanding of what media are doing. So this is one reason where media literacy is absolutely necessary. And the second point which I would like to highlight is there is uh, a media influence over the political class. This is not only a post-independence phenomenon. Even before independence, many of our political leaders were associated with newspapers. So the legacy, the tradition is continuing, and newspapers have got an influence on the political class. But it is a kind of love-hate relationship. When the politicians get favorable publicity, they are happy. When they are criticized, I believe they are unhappy. The situation right now is slightly fluid because we are trying to question whether there is real freedom for the media in India after 1947. I can quote from many senior editors what they said about media freedom. So, without freedom, how can media operate to serve a democratic nation? We call ourselves as a developing democracy. Thirdly, the common masses still believe in mediated messages. They believe in what media say. So this, I don't want to use the word credibility factor because the credibility factor is to be assessed in a different way. But people believe in what media give. So this is quite interesting. They may not like media, they may criticize media, but still they believe in media. So this is one important point to be noted. And the next point I would like to talk about is the media performance audit. Now, who is there to assess and evaluate the media performance? It should be done every now and then. Unfortunately, we do not have such a mechanism. The press commissions, we had two press commissions, and it is almost say 30, 35, 40 years that we do not have any media commission to assess the performance of the media and then suggest ways and means to improve the quality of performance. So this is one more important point to be noted. And in addition to this, the failure of the watchdog mechanism. There is a watchdog mechanism called the Press Council of India. It has not been able to do much because of the restrictions that the Press Council is facing in terms of its functionality. And another important point is democratization of media contents. Now, as has been pointed out by the previous speaker, now news is an assembly line production. Now we have, we talked about manufacturing of consent, but now it is not only consent, it is also manufacturing of news, manufacturing of dissent also. See, it is all some kind of opportunistic method of dealing with the masses. And another point which has been discussed all over the world is corporatization of media. See, the big media houses, the large media houses, they are is the disappearance of small and medium newspapers, and of course, when it comes to radio and television, is far from satisfied. We have been talking that we are a great democratic system, whatever it is, and thing because we are a country of paradoxes, and here there is a paradox. We are talking about corporatization, but this corporatization emanates from what we call as crony capitalism. You know, they depend upon the government for everything. It is even though we say the private sector is emerging and we are dismantling the license Raj system, but to be frank with you, even to this day, the government of India and the state governments are the largest advertisers. So there are many newspapers, radio stations, television stations. They depend upon the government for sustenance. It is unfortunate, but it is happening. And when we talk about media operations in India, as I told you, it is all paradoxes. Added to this is the death of objective journalism. We started teaching about objective journalism or objectivity in journalism. Now we find there is nothing called as objectivity. Every media house is taking sides according to its convenience. So we are moving away from the traditional concept of journalism, traditional concept of objective journalism to advocacy journalism. I call it as I say that we have entered a new age of advocacy. This is quite important. And in a developing democracy like India, we have to have social responsibility, or even you can call it as accountability. But unfortunately, it is not there. The media are not accountable to anybody. So this is quite important for us, those who are media academics. So we have been talking about what people in the field towards understanding media. Media literacy, I believe, has got something to do with what I call as what my friend Shelton, Gunaratne and others, mindful allocation. Perhaps it is based on the Buddhist principles of equity and instead of competition, it is all cooperation and what we call as collective welfare. And this problem of understanding media literacy is is compounded by a very limited presence of alternative media in India.
You are neither visible, sir, nor audible. Nagaraj, sir, I think there is some network issue. Hello? Professor Nagaraj, sir? Am I audible to you? Professor Nagaraj, sir?
Zubir, I think he lost connection. He is not here. Okay, he is back.
He is back. No? I think, yeah, there is some network issue. Maybe. So, should we move further then, Anubhuti ma'am? And then when sir will join us, then we can continue later on. Yes, actually, I mean, there are so many limitations of technologies also. So, yeah, when sir will just get connected with us, then we will further continue this discussion.
In the country, lopsided support for lopsided political ideologies. This is quite important because this is where I think people who are interested in media literacy should be focusing upon. And then comes media education and media literacy. Media literacy should be promoted by media educators. I think Dr. Anubhuti will talk about that more and more. Even though we are 100-year-old, media education is going to have its 100th year celebration very soon in India. Unfortunately, the place for media literacy is very less. Media literacy, it doesn't mean we are going to criticize media right and left, but it is about understanding how media operate in a democratic society and also how they should operate in a democratic society. And media literacy is essential from my point of view to control the quality of media contents. I know it is a very tough task, but I think there should be some kind of check so that the media houses will not cross the Lakshman Rekha. So media role in a developing democracy should be positively critic. And sometimes I feel whether it is a classic case of a mature nation but immature people or the vice versa. So this is quite interesting. Media literacy as part of media education should be taken seriously. There are stray efforts, but I can tell you from my experience, I know we are in the process of making media literacy a movement in India. I am associated with the two institutions which are trying to impart media literacy, one in North India, Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore Trust, and another one is my own Institute of Media Studies and Research in Bangalore. So these are, our main aim is to spread media literacy, not only in urban areas, but also in rural areas. And we are going to rural schools. We want to catch the young people at the higher secondary level so that they can start understanding what media are doing. So this is where I believe success comes if we take these things very seriously. So these are the points which I wanted to talk of, and added to this is I can tell you my own student who is in Kerala is trying to spread media literacy at the secondary school level by conducting regular workshops. In fact, because of his and the efforts of his friends, the Kerala state government has introduced mass communication as a subject of study at the high school level, or what we call as secondary education. Then media literacy in India, what should they do? I mean, people who are interested in spreading media literacy. So I feel they should focus on certain factors. One is making it, citizen focused, citizen oriented. Unfortunately, media literacy is not reaching citizens. It is confined to a few sections in the academic areas of the country. Then what I call as making prosumerized. That is media prosumerization. Make people produce contents and make them also the users. Somehow I have got some problem with the word consumer, media consumer, because I always feel that there is a commercial touch to it. So I prefer to use the word user. So then the third one, which I suggest, is promotion of alternative media. This is very important. In India, we don't have much of such an effort. Then the fourth one is demystifying media power. There is some, mysticism associated with media power, not only among the common masses, but also among the policymakers and the political class. So I think that is important. Then I know all of you know what we should do. Watching the watchdog, that is the media. We should regularly watch, because of course there is an analogy of watchdog, a lap dog, a mad dog. So I believe we have to watch the watchdog so that it will not cross the limits. Then what we should do, there is something, there is a problem which has been identified by many scholars. It is called pluralistic ignorance. Pluralistic ignorance among media people. They suffer from too much of self-importance. I believe this should be challenged, because, as a professional journalist long ago, I know how it operates. And making media literacy as a non-formal and informal educational system. It is very important that we have to make it a component, a permanent component of media education system. And there is one more point which I would like to highlight: making media literacy as part of national development strategies. If we say communication is development and then media literacy is also development, national development, I believe we should think on those lines. And we have to free the media audience from the illusory media hegemony. Some people feel that the media are hegemonistic. We in media or we in media education feel that the political hegemony is there over us. But there are people who also think that media are also, following the path of hegemony. So this is very important. And the most important point, which I would like to highlight is we are the country of Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi. So India needs a development which is non-violent, because quite often I believe that development is violent. When we are taking away the livelihood of the marginalized people, I think it is a very violent development. So in order to avoid such a situation, media literacy should advocate non-violent form of development. And media literacy, of course, is quite important for the new millennials because they are media savvy, technology savvy, and if we can guide them properly, perhaps we will achieve success. And media literacy is really required for what I call as public activism. Activism. The public, everybody in the public should become an activist. So this is quite possible if we involve the civil society for media literacy campaigns. Then my question to everybody is, should we not talk of gender sensitive media literacy campaigns? How far we have progressed and how much effort we should make to make media literacy gender sensitive, because in India, half of the population is of women. And most of them, particularly in the rural area, they are away from the media glare. They are only media users for entertainment, not for any other thing. So my take is, should we not think on those lines? Because we talk of empowerment, we talk of many other things when it comes to women. We talk about reservation in legislature, reservation in employment, but how far these can be achieved, that is with the help of the media or without the help of the media. If it is with the help of media, I think we require here also media literacy for gender sensitization, and also it should lead to what I call as empowerment of women. And of course, I have already spoken about the focus on children, catching them young for media literacy. I believe I have been able to give my random thoughts on what media literacy should be like. And I thank everybody for listening to me patiently. A minor technical glitch for giving me an opportunity to participate in the webinar. Thank you very much.
For your words of wisdom. Sir threw light on many aspects of media literacy, like Sir talked about watchdog mechanism of media and democratization of media content, gender sensitivity should be there. So many aspects, so many rich aspects we have to discuss later on. But due to the limitation of time, I mean, we are just moving further ahead. So now with us is our panelist, Professor Dr. Anubhuti Yadav, and I request Professor Zubair Khan sir to please play her audiovisual profile, and then I'll request Professor Anubhuti Yadav ma'am to throw light on initiatives, media literacy taken here in India.
Professor Dr. Anubhuti Yadav. Dr. Anubhuti Yadav is Head of the Department of New Media and Course Director of Advertising and Public Relations course in Indian Institute of Mass Communication, IIMT Delhi. She is also holding the responsibility of Dean Student Welfare. She is member of Executive Council and Academic Council. She teaches new media, data journalism, advertising and public relations. She has conducted research in areas like media literacy, women and media, media and children, informational communication technology and new media, and has presented papers at various national and international conferences. She is the co-author of Indian edition of Media Literacy, Key to Interpreting Media Messages, book developed under Digital International Media Literacy Project. She is currently working on a book on new media journalism. She is advisor to Media Ownership Monitor, India Project, an initiative by Reporters Without Border to map ownership pattern in media industry across the globe. Professor Anubhuti Yadav holds an MSc degree in Journalism and Mass Communication and obtained her PhD in Mass Communication from Guru Jambheshwar University, Haryana. Her doctoral research examined the impact of exit polls and opinion polls. We welcome you, ma'am.
So on behalf of Mass Communication Department of Prestige Institute of Management and Research, I welcome Professor Dr. Anubhuti Yadav ma'am. And I would request her to please throw light on the initiatives regarding media literacy taken here in India.
Yeah, thank you very much, Zubair, and I hope that I'm audible to all of you.
Yes, ma'am, you are very much audible.
Thank you so much, and good evening to all of you. And it's a great pleasure to be amongst two stalwarts from the field of media and information literacy, Professor Nagraj and Mr. Baker. I've been following your work and have taken a lot of inspiration. And whatever little I could do in the field of media and information literacy is because of the motivation which I got from your work. So thank you very much to the organizers for calling me here and putting up this particular webinar together, and especially in the times where everyone has felt that media and information literacy is very, very important. And I'm really happy that, you know, nowadays all the colleges, universities, non-government organizations, government organizations, they are coming up with the webinars, they're coming up with the lectures on media and information literacy. And in India, in fact, like Professor Nagraj said, that we have almost completed 100 years of media education. But as far as the media and information literacy is concerned, we are still at a nascent stage. And but I personally feel that during this pandemic, this media and information literacy in India has got that push. And it happened because, you know, when this pandemic started, you know, the social media was flooded with, you know, a lot of rumors, misinformation, disinformation, fake news around COVID-19. And at that point of time, a lot of people realized that, you know, media and information literacy is the solution to this. We just cannot control what kind of information which is coming our way, because see, with the social media, we have democratized the media landscape. Anybody can create, anybody can share. But what we can do is we can sensitize people how to consume media messages. So I think, you know, this time, and this is a very crucial time, we've been, all of us, we were feeling, you know, little bad in the sense that, you know, the lockdown was there, we were not able to go out, interact with our colleagues, but something good had happened. And, you know, I'm really very happy that, you know, media and information literacy had got a push at this point of time. So the brief which was given to me was that I need to talk about media and information literacy initiatives in India. what all happened, how it happened, what all organizations were involved in that. So when we talk about media and information literacy in India, it started in 2005 or 6, which is very ironical in the sense that when we're talking about, media and information literacy across the world, it started in 1960s, right? And a lot of teachers who started that particular movement. But in India, at formal level, it started in 2006, 5 or 6. And this happened, when the National Curriculum Framework was formulated. And this National Curriculum Framework 2005, and National Curriculum Framework, as you all know, that it's responsible for the education of the entire country, and especially like school education talks about what will go into the textbook, what will be the syllabus. So in National Curriculum Framework 2005, there was one very important component, and that was connecting knowledge to the life outside the school. Keeping in view what we thought that, media is very important part of students' life. There have been a lot of researches wherein it was said that students spend, on an average 6 hours in front of television. It was also said that, the television is another school away from school. So we felt that why not talk about media, which is very, very important and crucial to, students' lives. And that's why, this media studies was started at school level in India and at a formal level. Before that, there were a number of initiatives. There were scattered initiatives down south. There were a lot of workshops which were conducted in the field of media and information literacy. But at the formal level, that was the time when it was introduced. So how it was introduced, because we were all new to this whole concept. In school education, media studies was not there at all. So the first thing which was done was that the media as a subject was integrated with other subjects. Rather than offering it as a standalone, the idea was that let's integrate it with the other subjects like political science, sociology, history, so that when they are studying those subjects, they should also be aware of, the media concept also, and the media subject also. So this was the first thing which was done. And, if you look at the textbooks which came out, after National Curriculum Framework, you would see that there are a lot of examples which came from newspapers. Newspapers clippings were used, while teaching them about history. For example, when there was a chapter on freedom struggle in India, so what all newspapers were there at that point of time, the clippings of those newspapers were there in the textbook. So this is how it was introduced at the first level. This was the first phase. Then the second phase was we thought that, no, we need to introduce this as a proper subject at school level. So at that point of time, we introduced media studies as a subject in grade 11th and 12th. So it was introduced. Now, in both the cases, as a person who was coordinating that, and also like the teachers who had to implement that, we faced number of challenges. For example, in the first case, when it was integrated, we felt that the focus was still on the subject. The focus was still on history or political science or geography. And many a times what teachers used to do, they used to skip the examples which we felt were very important to understand media. And in the second case, what happened that the teachers felt that they were not prepared enough to teach this particular subject at school level. For example, the teachers who were teaching language, history, geography, they said that this is their main subject. And teaching another subject in which they are not trained, they found that very challenging, and rightly so, because they were never trained in that subject. In India, we have courses like B.Ed, M.Ed, these are the courses which train teachers. And in those courses, the media is not at all there. So we could understand the challenge which were faced by those teachers. Also, there were challenges or there were questions from the parents. The parents said that, class 11th and 12th, they're very crucial classes. After that, students have to join college. So why burden them with another subject? So that's another thing which came. But, this is something which we handled by offering this as an elective subject. We said, okay, now it's not compulsory, it's elective. Whosoever wants to take this particular course, they can take that. So these were few initiatives which were taken. But after having a deliberation with the teachers, discussions with the teachers, and the experts like Professor Nagraj, we felt that it was not doing that well. We had a lot of things in mind. We thought that it will be a good initiative. At that point of time, we called all the teachers. We conducted a lot of training programs for them. We thought that maybe like after attending those training programs, they'll be able to deliver that subject in schools. For a few days they were able to, but after that again they had this issue. They said that no, we are not prepared enough to handle the subject. So again we called those 200 teachers at NCRT, and we discussed with them. We said that the discourse on media is very important. This is something which we cannot ignore, right? So at that point of time, this idea of media club came. So we said that, okay, not as a formal subject, but you also feel that, students need to know about media. There has to be a discussion on the issues related to media. So let's have media clubs. And then across the country, we started media clubs in schools. And the objective of those media clubs was like to make students understand the impact of media on individuals and on society, to help them like to understand that, how to deconstruct media messages. We also added one very important part, is that how to express yourself using wide variety of media formats. So they were doing that, and we also introduced them to various career options which are available in media. So the media clubs went off well. There were a lot of takers. Students were actively participating in those media clubs, and there were a lot of exercise which students were doing, and which were very encouraging for us. For example, the schools, they came out with their own newspapers. There was a competition for those newspapers, which school had the best newspaper. While the students were working on these newspapers, they understood, how the working of the newspaper. I remember I went to one school, they had to launch their newspaper, and when I went there, these students, they told me that, ma'am, our principal didn't give us money, didn't give us funds. So we earlier we didn't have multiple copies, and we wanted to have that. We wanted to distribute that in the community. So I said, but now you have so many copies. What did you do? They said, then we realized that why don't we go out, talk to, all the shopkeepers around, and, get advertisements from there. So this is how it was done, and this is how they understood the process of making of, media messages or media content. So this was done. Another very important thing which was done to encourage students to create those media products. There's this one a national festival which we organize every year, and National Council for Education, Research and Training organizes this festival, and this is called All India Children Audio Video Festival. We added the category of students production in that. And that actually became a platform for these students to showcase the product which they were making in the media clubs. So this is another activity which was successful, but it was successful till the time we were hand-holding those teachers. And the moment, I really like this. So it's a media literacy for children, and I could hear the sound of a kid here. Good. So, so a lot of initiative, but, these media clubs also did well till the hand-holding was there. And then we thought that, now is the time they should be able to conduct, all these activities themselves. So slowly, like, we actually, not disassociated with us, but we felt that, okay, let us give them some, autonomy, and they should be able to do on their own. But unfortunately, they were not able to handle that particular thing. Out of 200 media clubs, which we started, around 5 or 6 years back, and right now we just have, 4 or 5 media clubs, which are running, in our country. So, which Professor Nagraj said, it's very, very right that we had a lot of initiatives. All the initiatives are scattered, different places, different people are involved in that, but there is no concerted effort to include media and information literacy in our curriculum. So this is something, this is experience because I've been involved with each and every activity, and I wanted to share with all of you. Some of them were successful. Say, for example, when we talk about media studies as a subject, it is still there. So, that's doing well. There are a lot of students who are, taking a part in that. But the media clubs, yes, most of them, they shut down. I mean, they are not functional anymore. But now some more things which are happening and which I want to share with you, that CBSE is Central Board for Central Education. It's for the Frank Baker. I mean, they're the board which looks after, the school education in our country. And they have actually planned that, this subject should not be introduced only at class 11th and 12th. We need to introduce this subject 6th onwards. So we have started working towards this, and the focus this time is not on like introducing this subject so that the students can have career in media, but the media literacy, so that they understand, media messages which comes their way. So this is one thing which is happening right now. Another very important which had happened yesterday only, the cabinet has approved national policy on education. Right? And there is one very important thing in national policy on education which can strengthen media and information literacy movement, and that is that they are giving more stress to critical thinking. They are saying that you have to reduce those concepts which you used to teach in the different subjects. You have to limit that, and you have to give more space to project-based learning, experiential learning, activity-based learning. So here I think, and this is like to Professor Nagraj also, that keeping this in mind, I think, we can again start interacting with the national bodies like National Council for Education Research and Training, CBSE, so that again we can push it and we can make it part of the national curriculum. And this is all from my side, but at higher education level, yes, most of the institutes have included media and information literacy in their curriculum. At IMC, which is a premier institute in journalism and mass communication in India, I'm teaching there. I take pride that last year we got that thing included in our curriculum, but it's very unfortunate in the sense that this is something which is very important, and we got that thing included in our curriculum just last year. But I don't know about other institutes, but the best part which I like about this whole discourse on media and information literacy is that there is a lot of interest among scholars to conduct research in this area. And I've seen like there are like 5 or 6 I can name, I mean, those who have done their PhD in this particular area, which is a very good thing which has happened. But as Professor Nagraj said, we have to take this to grassroots level. Talking about media and information literacy is one thing, but when we are talking about MIL, we are talking about media and information literate citizens. So which means that it has to be taken to the grassroots level. Just last thing, there's this one initiative which is taken by Google and then Internews data leads, and they are saying that it's going to be the biggest media and information network in India. So we have started working towards this, and the whole objective of this is to go to the 2-tier or 3-tier cities and train people in media and information literacy. So this is something which is happening right now. I'm part of that particular initiative. In this, as Professor Nagraj said, that we are taking a lot of media educators on board from the different parts of the country, and there'll be a training program for them, and then they'll further go and train the community in media and information literacy. So this is all I have to say. I think I've taken my time, and this was my brief. So thank you very much. But at the end of the session, definitely whatever the questions are related to this and all these initiatives which I have mentioned, I'll be happy to take those questions. Thank you.
In fact, yes, there are so many questions, and but we request our participants that we will open the house for discussion. I mean, after having our keynote speaker, and then we will just start that session. And I also request all participants to please unmute your video. You only mute your audios, please. So unmute your videos. Only audio should be muted. And thank you so much, Anubhuti ma'am, for throwing light on the initiatives taken here in India regarding media literacy and the media clubs, which are running by students, young students, and they are learning how to decode media messages, how to create media content. Because yes, I mean, if we define the media literacy, so media literacy really means to access and analyze, evaluate, and create media content as well. So from that part, I mean, students are just initiating. So that is a great thing. And so many efforts are being taken. But yes, you talk about that it's scattered. So we have to somewhere come, together. We should hold hand together, and so that we can take some more initiatives. And on ground, I mean, we have to practice media literacy. Now, yes, the time for our keynote speaker. And I'll request Professor Zubair Khan to please play the audiovisual profile of Mr. Frank W. Baker.
Mr. Frank W. Baker. Mr. Frank W. Baker is a media literacy education consultant for more than 20 years. Mr. Baker is graduate in journalism from University of Georgia. Worked in television news for more than a decade in South Carolina, Maryland, and Florida. In 1987, Mr. Baker joined the Orange County Public School in Orlando, Florida as an administrator in the areas of instructional television, distance education. There, he collaborated with Time Warner Cable and the Orlando Sentinel's newspaper in education to bring media literacy education to teachers and education. He also co-taught a college-level media literacy course for educators and developed a nationally recognized media literacy website. In 1999, Mr. Baker chaired the National Media Literacy Conference. He is former president of National Association for Media Literacy Education and former vice president of National Telemedia Council. For his contribution in media literacy education in 2007, he won Leaders in Learning Award. His research articles have been published in several renowned journals. He served on the National Council of Teachers of English (NCTE) Commission on Media from 2005 to 2008. His published books are Coming Distractions, Questioning Movies in 2007 by Capstone Press, Political Campaigns and Political Advertising, a Media Literacy Guide in 2009 by Greenwood Press, Media Literacy in the K-12 Classroom in 2012, and in 2017, Routledge published his book Close Reading, the Media Literacy Lessons and Activities for Every Month of the Year. He contributed several chapters on media literacy for various publications. Apart from that, Mr. Baker is an avid photographer and his bird photographs have been published by the North American Nature's Photograph Association. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation and for getting your time to discuss on media literacy and importance of critical thinking in this information age. So now, yes, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. It is an extreme honor and privilege to have been invited to participate in this very important, engaging, and relevant topic. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate the professors who have organized this event, the ones who have spoken previously. I'm so excited to learn about the status of media literacy in India. My background primarily is in teaching teachers. 99% of my work has been Frank Baker standing in front of teachers to help them better integrate media literacy instruction into the classroom. I have had opportunities to work with students, and that has been extremely rewarding as well. But I want everyone here to appreciate the fact that my paradigm, my perspective, my point of view comes from a K-12 educator, someone who has worked for more than 20 years. And so I continue to be interested in how I can get in front of teachers to show them simple ways to incorporate media literacy into whatever the subject may be. I have written about media literacy in math, media literacy in science, media literacy in the English language arts and in the history and so forth and so on. I can tell you that the best partners in education that I have here in the United States are the school librarians. Many of them who have been trained in information literacy, but not necessarily media literacy. And so that's one of my priorities right now. I do have a PowerPoint that I'm going to go through, that I'm going to share with you all now. I have already incorporated several of your questions into the PowerPoint. And in fact, the presentation will answer many of the questions many of you have already posed. And so I'm going to share my screen now. I want everyone to have my email address because you may have questions that you'd like to direct to me after the fact, as well as the fact that I am on Twitter. And so I invite you to follow the Media Literacy Clearinghouse on Facebook and to follow me on Twitter. Here's my website, the Media Literacy Clearinghouse. It was designed more than 20 years ago as a resource for K-12 educators. But I have heard from many of the students around the world how much they appreciate getting it as well. I'm seeing some things on the screen. Here are my books that were mentioned in the introduction. On the right was the first book I wrote for young children. It was about understanding the movies. The second book I wrote was on the role of media and politics. This is a book for teachers and students. The third book I wrote is Media Literacy in the K-12. It is now in its second edition. And the most recent book on the left is Close Reading the Media. Close Reading the Media book grew out of a series of blog posts that I have been writing for the last 3 years. I've been looking at the popular culture and current events and writing about things that I thought would resonate with teachers. So I invite you to go to middleweb.com, where you can search for my name and you can read those columns. I do want to tell the professors that are here on the session that you are freely able to take these column blog posts and use them as readings to support whatever it is that you are doing. You have my permission. In the United States, Thomas Jefferson said, a well-informed electorate is a prerequisite for democracy. I ask you today, what will happen if people are ill-informed? Here are the problems. Here's the challenge that we all face, ladies and gentlemen. Many people are media illiterate. They don't think critically about what they are consuming. And many people are sharing information without verifying that information. There are bad actors right now, at this very minute, creating content designed to fool people. They depend on the people who are not critical thinkers to believe it and to spread it, and I'll add to act on it. So every one of us has a responsibility to step up to this challenge to promote media literacy. And I'm so happy to hear that many of you are doing that. And so here's a graphic that I produced in the United States. Only you, Uncle Sam says, only you can prevent media illiteracy, right? Okay, so if we fail to provide young people with the instruction the knowledge, the skills, we are doing them a disservice. So I'm very happy to hear in this webinar the efforts that are underway to meet the challenge of teaching them, and not only at the secondary level, but much younger, which I truly support. So I'll start right here. Who are the media? You know who the media are, but how often do we ask the questions, who produces them? What are their purposes? Who pays attention to them? How do they get an audience? Who benefits from the information? Who owns them? How are they distributed? I've been saying for a long time that media literacy ought to be called, and this is used in the United Kingdom, screen education. And so I've been saying most people, especially young people, only know what they see on the screen. They have not been taught how a production got onto the screen. They've never been into a television station. They've never been into the newspaper office. They don't know how a magazine is produced. They might use the media, they might be media savvy, but they're not necessarily media literate. In the film The Wizard of Oz, Toto the dog famously pulled back the curtain to reveal that there was a man behind the curtain, a man who created the image of the wizard. Well, Frank Baker likes to think of himself as Toto. I want to pull back the curtain to help young people understand how media works. So one of my points today is, today we cannot depend on social media to be the police. They say they are going to be responsible, but let's face it, it is up to us to apply critical thinking to everything we consume there. Media literacy is a phrase that means different things to different people. In fact, if you read a news story about fake news in the last 3.5 years, you saw a reference to the phrase media literacy. And in many cases, those references were about information literacy, not media literacy. So I define media literacy simply as analysis plus production. Media literacy to me is this tree with two huge branches. One is analyzing media, and the second is producing media. Those of you in education, I hope, already understand the Bloom's taxonomy scale of learning. At the bottom of the scale is the lower order thinking skills. But there is a new Bloom's, ladies and gentlemen, called the Bloom's digital taxonomy. And at the top of this higher order thinking skill is creating. And the examples given here include filming, animating, blogging, mixing, remixing, podcasting, etc. Media literacy encompasses many different topics and areas and disciplines. And not everyone who teaches media literacy teaches all of these, but it touches on all of these. So media literacy is about critical inquiry, pure and simple. And critical inquiry is about asking questions. In the United States, many teachers tell me, my students don't ask questions. That is a problem. I brought with me a video. I hope this will play. It's intended for students, and so I'll see if it plays now.
Just like a house, media products are
Okay, so that video was produced by our colleagues in Canada, and there are several other media minutes that you can find on YouTube. So if your audience is young people, the media minutes are a good introduction. For years, I have been exposed to many definitions of media literacy, but I have found only one that I am fond of and that I share with all of my audiences, and so I bring it to you. And here it is. It was written by the Ministry of Education several years ago for their resource guide. And it says media literacy is concerned with helping students develop an informed and critical understanding of the nature of mass media, the techniques they use, and the impact of the techniques. Now, I'm a big fan of that word technique. How do the media work? Most young people don't know how the media works, how the media produces meaning, how they're organized, how they construct reality. And last but not least, in their definition, there is a reference to helping young people make media. So one of the key ideas is that all media are representations. So I'll ask everyone, what is this? And if you said it's a horse, you would be wrong. It's a photograph of a horse. It represents the horse. Now, if you didn't know that, that's okay. You haven't had a media literacy training. Just the same way as this is not the actor. This is a photograph of the actor that has been taken by a camera, and it has been cropped, so we only see part of him. So in the United States, in the 1990s, the Center for Media Literacy, of which I'm still very fond of, created these 5 core concepts. And these are things that I suggest to teachers that they replicate and put in the classroom and use as a guide to understanding media messages. First, that all messages are constructed. That secondly, that media are texts with their own languages. And third, that we don't all experience, we don't all see media the same way. We come from different regions, we have different experiences, and so forth. Fourth, that media have embedded values and points of view, and the values may not be the ones that you follow or respect. And last, but perhaps not least, media are created predominantly for power and for profit. Correlated to the concepts are the questions. If we say all media are constructed, then the first question is, who's doing the constructing? Who is the author? Do we know? What techniques are they using? How might different people see a message differently from me? What is included or excluded? And why was a message sent? So my message is that media are texts. They are designed to be close read, to be analyzed, to be deconstructed and reconstructed. So several years ago, the Partnership for 21st Century Skills, which was organized to guide educators into future planning for teaching, defined media literacy, how messages are constructed and for what purposes, and so forth and so on. I won't spend much time here. I mentioned close reading, and in my experience is that many educators understand close reading as it applies to print, but not all educators have been exposed to close reading as it applies to media. And so my colleagues in New Zealand have this definition. When we close read a media text, we deconstruct it to understand its meaning. In order to do that, you have to understand the media language that it uses. And here are the media languages: photography, film and television, print, gaming, radio and music. And so if we're going to study media, we have to help students understand the specific languages that are used. And before you can understand the languages, you must consider the meanings, the conventions, the codes, the genres, the choices, the combinations, and the technologies. Our colleagues in Ontario, whose definition I presented to you, have created the media studies triangle. So instruction in media studies and media literacy follows this particular model. And in the United Kingdom, the key concepts involve media languages, the institutions, the genre, the representations, audiences, ideology, narrative, and so forth. In the United States, I have studied teaching standards, and we found, in our study, we found media literacy primarily in the teaching standards for English, for social studies, and in health. I want to talk next about visual literacy, because I can't talk about media literacy without first teaching teachers and students how to view, how to see. The American Library Association created this infographic. So we have visual literacy at the center, but as we move out of the center, we see things like locating images and analyzing images and evaluating images, all of which are important. So I bring this image up, and I use this in my workshops. This is a photo without captions. And without captions, in order to gain knowledge, you have to look at the photo and infer from what you see. And so the initial question here is, what do you see? You might see the president, former President Obama, standing at a podium, and I might ask, what else do you see? And you might say, well, I see physicians or doctors. And I would say, what is your evidence? What evidence can you cite that they are physicians or doctors? And you might say the white lab coats, and you would be right. But context is important here. Did these physicians show up at the White House wearing their white lab coats? Or do you think the White House distributed the white lab coats? Of course, we don't know the answer. We were not there. We depend on the photojournalist who took this picture and the other reporters who were there to be our eyes and ears at events. But it is up to us, the news-consuming audience, to apply some critical thinking. At this particular event, the White House invitation to the doctors said, wear your white lab coats. But the next day, a newspaper that is not a fan of the Obama administration actually showed a photo of a White House staffer handing a coat to a doctor who neglected to bring his. So another consideration is, what do we not see and why? Here is Modi and Trump sitting on a bench on the cover of India Today magazine. You may not have ever questioned it, but I did, especially when I found this image on another magazine, which showed President Trump's wife sitting next to him with her hand on the bench, but all of that has been wiped out for the cover on India Today. So asking what is omitted is important. And in fact, a quick search on Google and we can find the original photo of which it was cropped for both magazine covers. I have a webpage called Is Seeing Believing, which I created many years ago, again, as a resource for educators who were going to address the manipulation of images. And I think we all know many, many images are manipulated today, and so the visual literacy becomes more important than ever. I currently have on my website a collection of current magazines that portray the coronavirus pandemic. And my colleagues have created a lesson plan around how to take a magazine cover and deconstruct it from both a visual literacy and media literacy perspective. So I want to talk next about advertising, which is huge in our world and huge in the world of our students. And so my first question under advertising is, what is the purpose of television? And if you're sitting there saying the purpose of television is to entertain, you would be wrong. The purpose of television is to deliver eyeballs to advertisers, pure and simple. Next question, what is the purpose of advertising? And if you said the purpose of advertising is to sell, I'm going to disagree with you. I believe the primary purpose of advertising is to persuade. And if you agree with me, then perhaps teaching students the propaganda techniques should be paramount in what we teach young people. Now, so here's an ad that I've used in my workshops, and you all are seeing it for the first time. Take a look at it. My advice is to have my audiences read every word on the page. So we see the word infatuation in the upper right-hand corner, and in the lower right-hand corner, we have the product and we have the slogan. But you may not have noticed some small words in small font on the left side of the page, running vertically up the page. Small font words might be very important for students to know what that says. So I have students look at the slogan, the product name, how about the font used, the styles and the colors and the layout. And then of course asking questions like, well, what do you see? Who do you see? What are they doing? Because I work with at-risk students, I might ask them to write a paragraph. What do you think is happening in this picture? What do you see? There's a story going on here. Can you tell me? Also, we can look at this from a media literacy perspective and ask, who is the target audience for this ad? And what techniques are getting our attention? And who has the power? And of course, we can look at it from a visual literacy perspective as well. So in India, as in the United States, there's advertising everywhere. But how often do we stop and think about how it works to educate, inform, persuade, maybe even fool? And on my website, I have all of these advertising topics. So there are opportunities within instruction to bring advertising in many disciplines and many classes. Next, I want to talk about the news. Here's a quote from a professor this week. Most news consumers are not going to hunt for information about a news organization's funding or potential bias. That's where media literacy comes into place. Fake news, we all know that it's a problem. This past week, health officials in the state of Texas said misinformation can lead people to make decisions based on false or inaccurate information. We know that to be the case in India and in the United States. And when that happens, people can harm themselves and others. They can also prolong the pandemic, they said. I don't need to tell you that the President of the United States, more than once, points his finger at the news media and claims that they are fake news. And what has been the result of 3.5 years of the president pointing his finger? Trust has been eroded. And that's a problem. So organizations like the New York Times have had to begin campaigns to rebuild the trust of readers. And the New York Times is an excellent newspaper. In fact, the executive editor said in an interview, it really seems to make Trump angry when our paper, which he sees rightly or wrongly as the ultimate establishment institution, questions him or criticizes him. So fake news is the topic. Here is an example that I use with teachers and students. And when I use this as a handout, I ask everyone, what are the clues that tell you it is fake? What are the red flags? And I'm going to take you briefly through the red flags. The first red flag is the URL. It says abcnews.com.co. It is not the real ABC News. The second is the logo. The logo resembles the television network ABC News, but it is not the real logo. Third, the headline claims that the president signed an executive order banning the saying of the Pledge of Allegiance in schools. That never happened. The next red flag is the name of the reporter. And so to verify, we could go out onto the web and see, is Jimmy Rustling a real reporter for ABC News? And lastly, the caption at the bottom of the photo. The photo is authentic. it is Obama signing an executive order, but not the executive order banning the Pledge of Allegiance. And so there are many things that have been manipulated to fool an audience. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how many of you all have heard of the expression lateral reading, but I want everyone on this webinar to write it down, because you're going to want to understand what it means and how important it is in your teaching of college students or secondary students or even younger. Lateral reading says you must verify what you're reading as you are reading it. So lateral reading says instead of reading a web page from top to bottom, you open a second tab. And in that second tab, you investigate the source of the first tab. Okay? And our colleagues have created a curriculum around not only lateral reading, but a free curriculum around helping young people understand much of what they are fooled by in social media. So these are free lessons and assessments. And so you're going to look up Civic Online Reading and register. It's free because the folks at Stanford University have recognized the problem that young people believe what they read on Twitter. They believe what they read on Instagram and other social media. And we have to help them. And here are complete lesson plans and assessments, ladies and gentlemen. I think you're going to find this one of the most valuable resources for your uses. I like what I call these infographics, and these are all over the web, how to spot fake news. I'm telling teachers who I work with to copy this, make it as a handout, post it in the classroom, make sure students are considering each of these elements in the infographic. Fact checking. This is probably one of the most important things that has arisen in the last year or so, is that respected journalists are now doing the legwork for us, the news consumers. They are out there every day fact checking. So these are some of the fact checking organizations in the United States, as well as around the world. AFP at the top of the page is an international news agency you may already be familiar with. And here are some of the other fact checkers from around the world. These are worth your saving and bookmarking. Very important fact checkers. In fact, India Today is fact checking. I also found the Logical Indian website is also fact checking, and there may be others that you're aware of that I am not. Just recently, Google announced that it's putting money into promoting news literacy. I think that's a very good move, because news literacy is more important than ever. But the question remains, who owns the papers? Do they have an agenda? Do all of the readers trust them? Are they biased? Recently, the Pointer Organization, which is a journalism education organization in the United States, released this study that many people cannot tell the difference between opinion and news and editorials. They just haven't been trained to understand the difference. So we as educators, as media educators, have a golden opportunity now to help people understand the differences, right? Lastly, I want to talk about the moving images. And this is about teaching students how to be critical viewers, how to analyze what they see specifically in movies and in film. Famous director George Lucas has said, if people are not taught the sound of images, the language of sound and images, shouldn't they be considered as illiterate as if they left college without being able to read or write? He understands the language of film, and he wants all of us to understand it as well. And so what are the languages of film? I define them as the tools and the techniques which create meaning. And so we have cameras, we have lighting, we have sound, post-production, set design, and actors. So here's an example from the movie Casablanca. And I have made note of all of the things that are going on the screen. So when I watch a movie, I am now aware of all of the elements that are on the screen. Camera angle. When a camera points up at a subject, it can communicate strength and power. How many of our students know that? When a camera points down at a subject, it can communicate weakness and vulnerability. So helping them understand where you put the camera has meaning is important. This is a publicity still from the famous film To Kill a Mockingbird. If you don't know the movie, the farmer has arrived at the home of the lawyer, and he is paying the lawyer with some crops. Standing behind the lawyer is the lawyer's daughter. Notice how the lawyer looks down on the farmer. Even the daughter looks down. Notice the clothes the farmer wears. Who is well off, who is not well off. So a still image from a movie is a great jumping off point to teaching students about film before you ever show them a film. So I pulled all of these off of the web. What do all of these movies have in common? I'll give you a moment. I'm going to help you. They are all based on a true story, right? And there are so many movies today that are based on true stories, which is wonderful, but there's a problem. Based on a true story does not mean it's accurate, does not mean everything you see on the screen actually happened. So filmmakers have something called artistic or creative licenses, which students don't know about. They don't understand it. They've not been taught it. And so we have to help them do that. And one of the ways that I help them do that is by pointing them to a website that I'm a big fond of, History versus Hollywood, in which the producers of this website will dive into what was true and accurate and what was not in many movies. So you might want to look at historyversushollywood.com. TikTok creators have just this past week created some media literacy short videos. And I think this is an excellent move because a lot of young people have gravitated to this platform. So we're taking the message to them using the medium that they are paying attention to. Other resources that I wanted you all to be aware of, all of these are on my website. I have a list of short videos that I have gathered from around the web that help teach media literacy. I have gathered student texts. We know students might be interested in careers in the media. And so what can we acquire for our library collections that might help them understand those careers? And at the bottom of the page, I have paused it for the summer, but I'm going to resume it in the fall. I post a weekly media literacy word of the week or phrase of the week. And the goal here is for students to go out and to define that word and to find out how it is used in the news. That leads me to questions. You all have posed some questions and I have pulled some of those to respond to now. One of the questions that I received, and I thank you for this one, is literacy versus media literacy in India. What is my take? Well, I don't think it's an either or, ladies and gentlemen, it's a both. Now, I live in South Carolina and we have many rural areas where the literacy reading rates are very, very low. So the problem is, do I come in and teach them how to read or teach them how to read the media? I certainly want people to learn how to read. The problem or the challenge is they're not all exposed to print. They are more exposed to media. And so to me, it's not an either or. I will tell you this. In the United States, 2 television programs helped young people learn to read. The first was Sesame Street back in the early 1970s, And then in the 1990s, Between the Lions. Both of these programs were created by the best of television producers and the best of education research. So if you don't know about Sesame Street, which I hope you do, you should look at it. And if you don't know about Between the Lions, you should look it up as well. What is your opinion of the current news cycle of COVID-19? Which country's media has it most informatively? I have to tell you, I'm not up to speed on everybody's media. It's just impossible for me. I will tell you that one of the highest rated for accuracy is the BBC. And I hope that you have access to the BBC. But like any media, we should all watch with a critical eye. Are they giving me the whole story? Where can I go to get more information? How do I incorporate media literacy into my class with students? That's a great question. You know, I think we have to start perhaps with the question of students, what is your favorite media and why? And bring in some examples. If they have a song that they like, why do they like the song? If they have a television show that they like, why do they like it? And then we can jump off and say, well, that television show is in a specific genre. I'll give you myself as an example. I happen to like science fiction. So I like that genre, okay? And we could ask students, if you were about to go watch a movie about Star Wars, what would you expect to see on the screen about that genre? And we can explore their prior knowledge and help them understand how media are made. That is the big question. Have them bring in an advertisement, and you as teachers help them begin to deconstruct it, right? Read a news story, look at the bias, who is included, who is excluded. The next question, how equipped are American media students in media literacy? I'm gonna say below 1, but it depends on where you ask that question. I could go to certain parts of the United States where I might find students who have received media literacy instruction, very media literate, but in general low. And part of my evidence is right here. Stanford University, the group that created the Civic Online Reasoning curriculum, did a study of 8,000 college students, middle school students, and high school students. Here's what they found. 82% of the middle schoolers could not distinguish between an ad and a real news story on a website. More than 2 out of 3 middle schoolers could not see a reason to mistrust a post written by a bank executive arguing that young people needed financial planning help. They didn't recognize the bias there. And nearly 4 in 10 high school students believed, based on a headline, that a photo of deformed daisies on a photo sharing website provided the strongest evidence of toxic conditions near the nuclear plant in Japan, even though no source of location was given for the photo. So the Civic Online Reasoning curriculum was developed after understanding the weaknesses in students' understanding of social media. So what are the skills needed in order to be affected by hoaxes? Well, pure and simple, folks, critical thinking, media literacy skills. That's it. How does one make out the difference between real news and fake news in the time of digital information overload? That's a great question. And it involves, if you recall when I showed you the fake news Obama story, it involves taking time to study the elements of the story, to deconstruct it, to understand what techniques are being used to fool the audience. And I urge all of you, find a fake news example, print it out, do what I did, put a red arrow next to the things that ought to be the red flags and use it with your audiences. How do we verify authentic versus inauthentic news? And how do we check the authenticity of news? That is the question of the day, isn't it? Verification is so very important. So here's the advice on the left given by this gentleman who is an editorial advisor to the George W. Bush Institute. Does the story have multiple sources? Does it provide context? Is the story balanced and nonpartisan? Does the website or publication have an open, transparent way of acknowledging its ownership? Remember that media literacy question? Who is the author? That gets to that question. Does the publication run corrections? And the questions to consider: who is telling me this? How do they know it? What is in it for them? And for many fake news purveyors, it's a profit motive. An organization called First Draft has put out these 5 pillars of visual verification. Are you looking at the original? Who captured the original? When was the piece of content captured? Where and why was it captured? Again, very good critical thinking types of questions. My librarian friends have an infographic, and I have broken it up into 2 parts, but when you spell it out, CRAAP, it spells crap detection. Yes, and this is another one of those infographics you can find on the web, which could be used with students to help them begin to verify. So C stands for currency, R for relevance, A, authority, another A for accuracy, and P for purpose. This website at a New York university is excellent for understanding, fact-checking, verification, fake news, and other information. It's a guide produced by the librarians there, and it's extremely valuable. What would you do to introduce media literacy through school library services? First of all, thank you very much for that question, because I work very closely with school librarians. Most libraries that I work with have magazines. And so I have used magazines with young people as a jumping off point. We will deconstruct the cover image. We will look at the words. We will ask questions like, who do you think might be the audience for this magazine? We might even look at the advertisements in the magazine. That's a jumping off point. School libraries are the information centers. They have books, some of them have newspapers, and some of them have magazines. I think the school library, the librarian is a good person to ask, how can I begin to teach young people about media? In fact, if we were to walk around a school, we could ask, where do we find advertising in and around the school? And how do advertisers get the eyeballs of students? Because they realize getting the eyeballs of young people is very important to whatever the product may happen to be. And so I think we have opportunities to help students. Visual literacy also comes into play here in the school library arena. So many books for young people are picture books, and that helps teach visual literacy. And from visual literacy, I like to jump to advertisements, which incorporate images and words. And then after visual literacy and advertisements, I move into the moving images of commercials and television film. So why is there no media literacy in India? Well, I have to disagree, because this webinar has just provided evidence that media literacy is starting and is widespread in many parts of India. It might not be everywhere. And we could say the same thing of the United States. We could ask, why is there no media literacy in the United States? Well, I can tell you why. In the United States, we have 50 separate states and 50 separate teaching standards, and media literacy does not seem to be a priority. But I think all of you listening to me believe that media literacy is a priority. And the second question is, should media literacy be introduced as a subject at the school level? Absolutely, it should be introduced. And it should be incorporated into every possible discipline. And on my website, you will find the disciplines and suggestions on how to incorporate it there. This question is, I want to know more about advertising literacy, dimensions of media literacy. Please go back to my website. where I have an entire section on advertising that would tell you much more than I can possibly elaborate in the time that I have remaining. But I hope that you will go back to my website. So how do I start teaching media literacy in my preschool for early childhood? I have suggested to early childhood educators, why not start with signs? What are the signs in your world? I'm talking about traffic signs. I'm talking about signs that might be posted outside of a business. I'm talking about billboards as signs. Why not have students draw a picture of a sign? Why is the stop sign red? Think about that. How does the color red work to get our attention? What else is red in our world? I think I would start young people with signs. I also teach with toy commercials. And it might be too advanced for preschool or early childhood, but for the elementary audience who pays attention to toys, I like to use toy commercials as a way to hook their attention, but also to teach them to question what they see on the screen. All right, so I've reached the end of my presentation. I just want to remind everybody of my website, the Media Literacy Clearinghouse. The URL is my name. I'm also on Facebook and I'm on Twitter, and I would invite you to join me and follow me there. And so I'm going to turn it back over to our moderators and our hosts and say again, what an honor and privilege it has been to be with you. For you, it's this evening, and for me, it's this morning. But what a great opportunity for me to share with you. Obviously, you have many questions, and I hope that you will go back to my website and consider my books as answers to your questions. Thank you. I'm seeing the chats in a wonderful session. That kind of feedback is very important to me. So I'll turn it back over to you all, because I think you may have some more questions for me and the other presenters.
Thank you so much, Mr. Baker. And it was such an enlightening session, and you can just see the feedback, you know, I mean, so many, in fact, scholars and media practitioners and media educators are just writing the feedback. And now over to Anubhuti ma'am. There is a question from, I think, Mr. Sunil. He just want to know, I mean, how to make B.Ed and M.Ed people to learn media literacy. I mean, to Anubhuti ma'am.
Okay, so see, one is that, you know, in B.Ed and M.Ed, the subject is not there, but it depends upon, you know, the teacher trainers, how they teach. As Mr. Baker said that, you know, if we want, then, you know, we can still make a room for media and information literacy, despite the fact that it's not part of the curriculum, which means whatever the subjects are there, say, for example, critical thinking is something which will be there in all the subjects. Right? So if it is there, let us take the examples of media. For example, a simple thing like, and there was this one question also here that, you know, who controls media, right? And whenever you are, you know, conducting any training program, any, you know, workshop, these are the basic things which, you know, even the teacher should know. For example, you know, whenever you, you know, interact with teachers, you know, a simple thing like, which is your favorite serial, or maybe like, which is your favorite television channel. Maybe then moving on to like the ownership structure of, you know, the news channels and the newspapers and all, because that actually tells you a lot about, you know, newspapers, news channels and all. So the whole idea is that, you know, if it is not part of the curriculum, then we have to make that conscious effort to integrate it with the other subjects which are there in that particular curriculum. Yeah, that's it.
So the next question is, ma'am, that, you know, how to make media literacy really approachable to common citizens. You know? Because I think that if we really want to be responsible parents, I mean, we have to understand what media literacy really means, because our kids, I mean, they're like, you know, the screen gazing time is just increasing day by day. I mean, hours and hours, they are just with their mobile. So how to make them, or how to sensitize them, you know, regarding this media literacy?
Definitely. See, yeah, we have to handle this subject at the different levels. So it's not just the school education or higher education. Say, for example, a very simple thing like, you know, the parents, they visit schools, right? At the time of the parent-teachers meeting. So can we organize some workshops for parents at that point of time? Elderly people, see, we keep talking about, you know, young people and, say, for example, the people who are going to colleges and all. But, you know, elderly people are the most affected when it comes to new technology. For example, all these WhatsApp messages and all, for them, it's a new technology. For us, like, we are growing up with this medium, we know like what is right, what is wrong, but we need to train them also. So it's very important to handle this subject at a multiple level. There had to be, you know, different strategies. The school is one thing that, yes, it has to be a part of the curriculum, as Mr. Baker said, but at the same time, you know, we need to train, or we need to sensitize community about this. And this one initiative which has just started, and I'm 100% sure that it will, you know, create some impact, you know, in our country, and which is called Factshala. And this is something which I shared with you earlier. This is something which is started by Google, Data Leads, and Internews, wherein they are selecting people from the community. They'll be the trainer, and then they'll go and train people in their own areas. Also here, the media students can play a very important role, not just the media educators, not just the media teachers. Now, if you are a student who have done a graduation in media studies or post-graduation in media studies, I think they should also take it up, and they should also conduct, you know, these workshops in their community, in their areas. So it has to be taken up at the different levels.
If I might add, if we could identify a student in, and I know that there are many institutions represented, if we could identify a student who is already media literate, who gets it, and have that student lead workshops for other students, or have that person, that young person, lead the workshop for the parents, for the elderly, for teachers. And so he or she takes ownership from it. We have so much to learn from young people. We all know that when we put a camera in their hands, they are already photographers, they are already broadcasters. Yet many of them don't understand the rules of photography, or the rules of broadcasting, or the rules of news. And so they put information out there which might show their ignorance. And that's why we have schools of mass communication and journalism and film schools. We want them enrolled so that they get the guidance and they become the leaders, the future leaders in that regard. I'd like to go back just for a moment, if I may. The person who asked a question about literacy versus media literacy. I have a 4.5-year-old granddaughter. And it's in the pandemic, her parents, who live very close to me, have asked me to come to their house to teach her how to read. And I want to tell you how absolutely rewarding that is to me, because I have gone to the education store and purchased material. I'm not trained in literacy, but I know I taught her father how to read when we had bath time, when we would look at letters and we would look at words. And and so I used opportunity. So I want to bring up that word opportunity. What are the opportunities for us to get in front of elderly people? What are the opportunities, as you say, to get in front of parents? What are the opportunities to get in front of young people, both inside and outside school? A webinar like this is a golden opportunity for us as media literacy educators to reach out to others. And I am blown away today by the numbers of people who are listening, both in India and outside the boundaries of India. That tells me there is immense interest in this topic, that we don't want people to be media illiterate. We want people to be media literate. And so again, I charge all of you with this responsibility to raise the bar. How can we improve education? It's a humongous task, as you all know, those of you who are involved. It's a huge task for me, and I've been at it for more than 20 years. And it's been very frustrating when some of the decision makers do not understand media literacy. They believe it has a political agenda when it does not. And so we have to overcome the obstacles. But more than anything, we can learn from each other. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, a question from KV Nagraj, sir. Actually, a question is from Mr. Rajiv Pratap Singh. He is asking light on media literacy and cultural imperialism.
It's a good question, but cultural imperialism comes when we start thinking about what others are doing in other countries, especially the West. See, the way in which we are moving, actually, I have been telling people that when we study certain books written by the Western scholars, there may be a kind of bias, or there may be a kind of cultural context in it. But the issue here is, what is our contribution to make it indigenous? Take the good things from them, adopt them, and try to have your own. This is where I think media literacy stalwarts in India should take the initiative to see that cultural imperialism does not percolate. Actually, in a globalized world, it is very difficult to say how we can avoid cultural imperialism. In fact, I had wonderful experiences in Norway. When I went to a television station, we had a discussion. There were two incidents on the same day. One is, people dying of hunger in Africa. And then there was a story, it is quite interesting. A lady, air traveler, paid for her puppy to be taken by air. So the second one was the most important story, but the hunger in Africa was not important. Now, I asked them, why don't you think of these people who are dying of hunger? Because it opens the eyes of the people, and maybe they will become emotional, empathetic. They may try to help the deprivileged people in Africa. He said, I go by my values of news. This is very important. It became, it became the most prioritized news. It was quite amusing for me, because I always think on the other side. So I believe that it is a question of how you take what is important to you and what is not important to you. So you should be very discreet. I do understand how cultural imperialism percolates, because we had colonial rule for so many centuries. So it is up to you to differentiate and to filter out what you want and what you do not want. This is what I suggest.
One more question is there, sir. I mean, one of the participants just asked that there are, false propaganda from the side of, say, from the government or from other organizations. Then how to stop that, or how to identify that false propaganda?
Well, it is up to the people to understand. This is where I think media literacy campaigns play a role. And already I think Mr. Frank Baker has explained how we have to find out what is fake news and what is not fake news. Ultimately, I tell you, it depends upon the individuals. In mass communication, we talk about selective perception. If a person believes in one political ideology, I think he believes even if the news is fake. And the other one who does not subscribe to political ideology may even say the real news as fake news. So it depends upon how intelligent you are in discriminating between what is real news and what is fake news. Now there are tools which are going to help you to find out. Still, I tell you, propaganda, publicity, all these will be there as long as the human civilization survives. It was there even before the advent of mass media. It is going to be there, and it is for you to find out what is true. Or people think that there are miracle tools. No, there are no miracle tools. You have to become intelligent. That's where this media literacy program is suggested. So become media literate, find out what is happening. Perhaps you will be able to find out. I was a professional journalist. I know how things happen within a media organization. Not only that, to tell you very frankly, I was an indirect owner of a newspaper in my city, Mysore city. You know, I tell you, quite interesting. The newspaper wanted to go to the community with community problems. See, there was a steep price rise of vegetables and essential commodities. We made a story, and people were not interested in buying the newspaper copy. And when we publish a story about the coming elections, the political parties and their strategies, I had to print extra copies. What do you say? So this is quite interesting. I will tell you, it all depends upon the people and their preferences. Let them become intelligent to find out how these can be separated.
Thank you so much, sir. Actually, we are just running short of time. So now I will request our HOD, Dr. Raju Johnson, to propose a word of thanks. Dr. Raju Johnson.
Yeah, thank you so much. This 2 hours has been really memorable for me. It will be throughout my life. I was feeling like I'm joining a revolution. It seems like it innovated me, it gave a kind of energy. The concept I heard somewhere around 2007 in India. And now, when we are talking on so much of variety of the media literacy concept that we can talk about, all the experts, they shared about what role the media bodies have to play, be it Press Council of India, ASCII, or NBA, different bodies. Parallel to that, Anubhuti ma'am, she talked about how the education in the school level, primary, from the 6th standard, I was going through that. So how important media literacy is in the current scenario. I was going through, I was hearing Becker sir also, they are far ahead in media literacy, when compared to India. So I was talking 20 years back, they have initiated a lot, not only in media literacy, various kind of streams. So a lot of work can be done when we gather this in such kind of platforms, and many things can be initiated, what I think. So I would like to just tell everyone, we have started media literacy in our curriculum. We have introduced that, media literacy, visual literacy as part of it. And I don't know whether Anubhuti ma'am knows it, but I got a chance to hear her talking on media literacy long back. So somewhere, and Bhavna ma'am, our moderator, she is also doing her PhD in media literacy. She has started a media literacy club with our institute. So we are trying to understand this, trying to take the initiative. We need all of your support, guidance, blessings, that we can be coming up in a roof and we can talk on this, talk to the government bodies about this. So something good can work out. So on behalf of entire Prestige Education Society, Department of Mass Communication, Prestige Institute of Management and Research Indore, I'd like to thank Professor K.V. Nagraj sir. I have attended his classes, like he was there in Indore, and he might be knowing Dr. M.S. Parmar. He was my guide that time. So listening to really very knowledgeable every time is something is like very good. I would like to thank Dr. Anubhuti Yadav madam for giving her inputs on the real needs. And when we talk, it's a time when we should react, we should act on the things that happens in media. Generally, what we do is we go through the social media contents, we see it, ignore it. We say, like in a physical life, we react to something. If someone is misbehaving to a woman, to elderly person, we react on it. Like we have been trained traditionally like that. But when it comes to virtual world, we try to escape sometimes. It's a time to act on this, and definitely media literacy platforms, teachings would benefit us. And thank you so much, Frank Backer sir. You it has been such a rich information. Like you have inspired us a lot. It was very enlightening to me also. Like seriously, I'll give a thought that what all can be done in Central India about this, and we'll try to take an initiative. We'll need your blessings and help for the same. I thank all the participants from India and abroad, and thank you so much. Very good morning, good noon, and good evening, and good night to everyone.
Then one
Thank
more
you so
thing,
much.
I just want to request Dr. Raju John sir to please announce that we are introducing media and information literacy as a subject in journalism and mass communication.
Yeah, I have already, I guess I have informed, don't
Okay.
worry, ma'am, it's your initiative. We are with you. We are with you. All of them are with us. Don't worry. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
So
you so much.
thanks
Thank
to
you.
all dignitaries
Thank
and
you.
yes, to all participants. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thank you.